He just disappeared, and no one saw a thing. The words hang in the air, heavy, almost too heavy to breathe. Spoken by a voice breaking with disbelief, a mother, a sister, a friend, someone who cannot understand how a life so young, so vibrant, could vanish into thin air. That voice belongs to Kadin Black, Kadin's mother. And even now, months later, the memory of that day still claws at her chest. Sharp, relentless, unyielding. It was December 17th, 2022, a cold winter morning in Wrightsville, Pennsylvania. A quiet town, the kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where streets are lined with modest houses, snow-dusted lawns, and children's laughter echoes from nearby schoolyards. But on that day, something impossible began to unfold. Something that would shatter the ordinary calm of a close-knit community. Kadin Black, 19, had been living with a friend on Vickley Drive, a temporary arrangement after he moved out of his father's home just a few months prior. A young man full of energy, bright, athletic, someone who could light up a room with his laugh. Yet even in his independence, he remained tethered to those who loved him most. That morning he woke up, went about his routine, and then he simply vanished. His friend remembers seeing him in the kitchen, making a cup of coffee, talking about mundane things, the day ahead, plans that would never be fulfilled. There was no argument, no sign of anger, no hint that anything was amiss. He walked out the door, and that was the last anyone ever saw him. Kara remembers the calls she made later that day, the increasing sense of panic, the cold fingers of dread wrapping around her heart. She tried calling his phone. Nothing. Texts, unanswered. His friends were called. No one had seen him leave. No one had seen him return. Hours ticked by, and with each passing moment the fear grew. That helplessness, the unbearable uncertainty, it settled like a weight, heavy, unshakable, in every corner of her home. It was in those first hours that the gravity of the situation began to sink in, the impossible reality that Kadin Black had disappeared, without a trace. No footprints in the snow, no notes left behind, no evidence to explain where he had gone, or why. It was as if he had simply been erased from the world around him. The family gathered, frantic, scanning the streets, calling neighbors, retracing his steps, their voices echoing in the cold winter air. Each call met with the same haunting answer: nothing. Nothing had been seen. Nothing had been heard. Authorities were called, the local police arrived, and what they found, or rather did not find, deepened the mystery. His room at his friend's house was untouched, his belongings in order, his wallet, his phone gone. The first responders looked at one another, their faces pale, understanding that this was no ordinary missing person case. There were no signs of struggle, no indicators of foul play, only absence. And yet, despite the calm appearance of that morning, the world had shifted, imperceptibly at first, but in ways that would ripple outward, changing the lives of those who knew him forever. It is difficult, nearly impossible, to convey the strange, surreal quality of a disappearance like this. Friends of Kadin spoke in hushed tones, remembering his laugh, his energy, the way he spoke about his plans for the future, college football, a life full of potential. And now each word felt like a cruel echo, a reminder that someone they loved had simply vanished, as if swallowed by the very air around them. Social media lit up that day, concerned messages, frantic texts, pleas for help. Have you seen Kadin? Please call me if you know anything. The community rallied hearts, pounding eyes scanning every street corner, searching for someone who might have seen anyone, anything. But the town was silent, the snow muffling footsteps, the streets empty, as if the world itself conspired to keep Kadin hidden from view. By evening, with darkness settling over Wrightsville, the reality could no longer be ignored. Kadin Black, 19, full of life, had disappeared, and no one saw a thing. His mother, sitting in the dim light of her living room, staring at the phone, willing it to ring, wondering if this was a nightmare from which she would awaken, whispered a question she could not answer. How could this happen? How can someone simply vanish? That question remains unanswered to this day, and it is the question that will guide this story, the story of a young man who vanished, leaving nothing but echoes, whispers, and a void that no amount of searching can fill. As you watch, you may ask yourself, what would you do if someone you love disappeared and left no clues, no footprints, no explanation, only silence? The search begins, and with it, a descent into uncertainty, fear. and the chilling reality that some disappearances leave a mark not on the earth, but on the hearts of those left behind, a mark that never fades, never heals, and never forgets. A bright teenager, with a life ahead of him, gone, before the disappearance, before the silence. Kadin Black was by all appearances just like any other 19-year-old living on the quiet streets of Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, a town where the winters are long and the winds cut across the Susquehanna with a chill that seeps into every crack and corner, but also a town where neighbors wave to one another, where front porches are occupied by chatting friends in the fading light, where the ordinary rhythms of life carry on week after week, year after year. Kadin's family, his anchor, formed the center of his life. His mother, Kara Black, a woman of quiet strength who balanced a full-time job with raising 3 boys, carried the weight of family and household on her shoulders, her warmth a steady presence in Kadin's life. His father, Maurice Black, pragmatic and firm, provided guidance, a hand ready to steer when needed. And his 2 younger brothers, Jordan and Carter, looked up to him with a mixture of admiration and sibling rivalry, teasing him one moment, following his lead the next. In this family, laughter was common, arguments rare, and bonds ran deep, as sturdy and familiar as the houses lining Wrightsville's snow-swept streets. Kadin himself was a bundle of energy, athletic and determined, a young man who thrived on movement, on competition, on pushing himself to limits that most only dreamed of. Football was more than a pastime. It was a passion, a field where he could channel focus and drive, where the roar of the crowd, even a small local crowd, energized him. Boxing, too, provided an outlet, discipline, rigor, a solitary confrontation with one's own strength and fear. But beyond the sports, beyond the physicality, Kadin was social, warm, and unafraid to engage. He had friends, close friends, people who laughed with him, argued with him, and sometimes argued against him. They were his community. And yet, in the last months, the contours of that community shifted. Earlier in 2022, Kadin had made the decision to move out of his father's home, a step toward independence, toward adulthood, toward forging his own path. It was a decision that brought excitement, but also challenges. Living temporarily with a friend on Vickley Drive, he adjusted to the rhythms of his own space, of his own responsibilities. A blend of freedom and uncertainty. Bills, chores, schedules, things that a teenager may have seen as mundane or inconvenient became part of his day-to-day reality. And while there were minor struggles, personal issues that he wrestled with privately, nothing in his life suggested a trajectory that would end in disappearance. Nothing beyond the normal, awkward, sometimes chaotic turbulence of adolescence transitioning into young adulthood. Wrightsville itself is a study in contrasts. Streets that wind gently through residential neighborhoods, homes with neat lawns and family cars parked in driveways, the faint smell of wood smoke drifting in winter mornings, all suggest peace, normalcy, a world where children play safely and neighbors know one another's comings and goings. Yet within this serene exterior, shadows always linger. Small alleys, empty lots, stretches of riverbank, areas familiar to locals yet easily overlooked, places where a moment's distraction could mean a missed sighting, a lost clue. It is in this ordinary suburban world, so familiar, so deceptively calm, that Kadin walked that morning, December 17, 2022, without any indication that his life was about to change forever. His last known location, the modest home of his friend, epitomized this sense of quiet suburban life. A house like many others, doors painted warm colors, windows framed with white trim cars in the driveway. Laughter and conversation drifting from kitchen to living room, everyday sounds of youth, homework jokes, music playing softly in the background. Kadin moved through it all naturally, a fixture of life, part of the routine, blending seamlessly into the fabric of the neighborhood. And yet, it was in this unremarkable everyday place that the extraordinary occurred. Those who knew him described Kadin as resilient, approachable, someone who faced challenges without complaint, someone whose absence left a hole so stark because he had always been present. His personality was magnetic, a combination of quiet determination and the easy confidence of someone used to the camaraderie of teammates and friends. Even small gestures, the way he held a door for someone, laughed at a joke, or offered advice to a younger player on the field, painted the picture of a young man grounded in the ordinary, preparing for a future that seemed inevitable. And therein lies the stark contrast, the cruel juxtaposition that makes his disappearance all the more chilling. Everything around him, his family, his home, his friends, the streets of Wrightsville, was normal, predictable, familiar, mundane. There was no immediate reason to suspect danger, no warning, no incident that could have foreshadowed a vanishing act so complete, so thorough. A teenager who had been living his life navigating the ordinary struggles and joys of youth simply ceased to exist in the public eye, leaving a vacuum that nothing could fill. As daylight faded on that December day, Wrightsville remained unchanged. The snow on the streets, the quiet of winter settling over houses. And yet, for Kadin Black's family and friends, the world had irrevocably shifted. The ordinary had fractured. The predictable had turned uncertain. And in the place of certainty, a single, unrelenting question remained: where had he gone? And why? It is the very ordinariness of the context, the routine life, the familiar streets, the laughter of friends, the quiet confidence of a young man on the cusp of adulthood that heightens the horror of what followed. A life seemingly bound for the future, suddenly absent. A boy growing into a man, gone. A home, left in silence, the echo of his presence lingering only in memory, in photographs, in the whispered recollections of those who loved him. This is the world Kadin Black inhabited. A world that could not have prepared anyone for the shock of that day. A world that would soon become the backdrop for a mystery that continues to haunt Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, and everyone who knew the bright teenager, with a life ahead of him, gone. Some say he left, some say he was taken. The words float uncertain, like mist over the Susquehanna in the early hours of a winter morning. Everyone has a theory. Everyone has a whisper, a hint of what might have happened. And yet nothing concrete, nothing verifiable. Just fragments, pieces of a puzzle that refuses to fit together. The first pieces of tangible evidence were sparse. Kadin's wallet, missing. His phone, gone. Items so ordinary, so mundane, yet their absence speaks louder than any cry for help. Authorities tracked the last known ping from his phone, Old Commons Road in Windsor Township, a place only 3 miles from where he was last seen, yet a stretch of road where no one reports seeing him. No witnesses, nothing to explain why the signal registered there and then disappeared. Friends and family have been interviewed countless times, their statements overlapping, conflicting, inconsistent. One friend insists Kadin had planned to visit a nearby town, perhaps a relative, maybe a neighbor. Yet others insist he had mentioned no plans, none at all. Some describe him joking about taking a walk, clearing his mind. Others recall a strange tension in his demeanor, subtle, almost imperceptible that day. Neighbors offer their own recollections, the mundane glimpses that in hindsight become unsettling, a shadow crossing the street, a car idling longer than expected, the faint hum of tires on gravel, nothing at the time that warranted concern, yet now, each detail echoes in the mind like a warning ignored. The world had remained ordinary, even banal, while the extraordinary unfolded just out of sight. And then there are the contradictions. A friend claims Kadin left the house around 11 a.m., heading toward the town center. Another says 1 p.m., intending to meet someone. A third recalls seeing him sitting silently on the porch, lost in thought, before disappearing entirely. Each recollection slightly different. Each one shifting the narrative, complicating the investigation. The tension builds, the threads tangle, and certainty becomes impossible. In these early hours, the case began to generate folklore. Not the kind whispered in ancient villages, but modern folklore, arising in the digital ether. Reddit threads, Facebook posts, neighborhood forums. The community's collective imagination taking hold. He never even left the house, someone types. He's still inside somewhere. Others speculate about abductions, stranger danger, conspiracies beyond comprehension. The more people speculate, the more the line between fact and myth blurs, until the truth becomes elusive, hidden in layers of rumor and fear. One thread on Reddit gained traction quickly. Users debated every possibility, dissected every known fact, questioned every motive. Why would a boy who loves football just vanish, someone asked. Another responded, maybe he wanted to disappear, start over. And yet another, or maybe someone made him disappear. Each post added weight. Each comment pulled the story deeper into the uncanny, the unexplainable. The interplay between tangible evidence and these early rumors set the tone for the investigation. Authorities chased leads, the cell phone ping reports of suspicious vehicles, neighbors who might have noticed something, and yet nothing definitive emerged. Every piece of evidence seemed to dissolve into speculation. Every theory collided with another, leaving gaps where certainty should have been. The fear in the community grew, subtle, creeping, almost imperceptible at first, then undeniable. Parents checked on their children more often. Friends called, texted, visited each other with a new wariness. The sense that a place once safe had shifted. Wrightsville's streets remained familiar, the snow still blanketing lawns. But in homes where Kadin's laughter had once resonated, there was silence. And in that silence, unease. Even among his closest circle, questions lingered that no one could answer. Did Kadin leave voluntarily? Did he encounter someone? or something that prevented him from returning. The unknown became a presence in itself, a character in the story, watching, waiting, shaping the lives of those left behind. This phase, the merging of facts with folklore, marks the first true descent into the mystery surrounding Kadin Black. The story is no longer linear. It is fractured, multi-layered, like the snow-dusted streets themselves hiding footprints that may or may not exist. And for viewers watching this story unfold, the question emerges almost instinctively: what really happened? The ordinary objects, the missing wallet and phone, become symbols of absence. The last ping on a lonely road transforms into a marker of mystery. Friends' testimonies conflicting and human illustrate the limits of perception. And the online whispers, forums, threads, discussions give life to speculation, legend. A digital folklore that grows and spreads, untethered from reality yet intertwined with it. Some suggest he left, seeking a new life and escape. Others insist he was taken, the victim of forces unseen. The reality remains unknown, but it is here in this liminal space between the tangible and the speculative that the story takes hold and grips the imagination. Here, the audience is forced to confront the uncertainty, to feel the tension of lives interrupted, the unease of evidence that refuses to coalesce into truth. And as night descends over Wrightsville, Pennsylvania, the ordinary streets, the familiar houses, the quiet front porches, all remain unchanged. But for Kadin Black, for his family, and for anyone following this story, everything has changed. A bright teenager, full of potential, is gone. And in the spaces he once occupied, the echoes of what might have been linger, haunting, persistent, unresolved. Some say he left, some say he was taken. The story of Kadin Black is only beginning. The more they searched, the less they knew. By December 18, 2022, the chilling reality had set in. Kadin Black, 19, full of life, full of promise, was officially reported missing. The call came from the family, voices trembling, eyes red, hearts heavy, each syllable carrying the weight of disbelief. For Kara Black, for Maurice, for Jordan and Carter, this was no longer a moment of worry. It had become a crisis. The Lower Windsor Township Police Department immediately began to mobilize. Officers canvassed the neighborhood, checked local streets, knocked on doors, and asked the same questions over and over. Have you seen him? Did he leave in the morning? Did he mention plans? The answers were frustratingly sparse. Each response seemed to contradict another. A neighbor had seen a young man matching Kadin's description near the corner store around noon. Another insisted they had seen him walk past Vickley Drive much later. Nothing lined up neatly. Nothing made sense. Then came the digital leads. Kadin's phone, missing as noted earlier, left behind a faint trail. GPS records placed him on Old Commons Road, roughly 3 miles from his friend's house. But this trail, like smoke slipping through fingers, offered no clarity. No witnesses could confirm his presence. No camera footage captured him. The signal was a flicker, brief, fleeting, disappearing into the ether. It was around this time that the FBI was contacted. The disappearance bore unusual hallmarks: a young man vanishing from an otherwise safe suburban environment. No evidence of foul play. No apparent motive. Federal agents joined local authorities, combing through every possible lead: phone records, social media activity, past routines, patterns in his life that might hint at where he could be or what had happened. Despite the increased manpower, despite the tools of modern investigation, the facts remained elusive. Interviews produced conflicting statements. Friends swore they had spoken to him in the morning. Others said he hadn't returned messages. Cameras in nearby intersections revealed empty streets. No trace of his figure, no car, no shadow, nothing. And the neighborhood itself, familiar, predictable quiet, seemed to conspire in silence. The family's anxiety escalated. Each hour, each passing day, heightened the tension in the Black household. Kara's voice, usually steady, quivered as she recounted the morning, her questions looping in endless repetition. Where is he? How could this happen? Did he leave voluntarily, or is someone, or something, involved? Maurice struggled with anger, frustration, helplessness, pacing floors, making call after call to friends, authorities, anyone who might know. The younger brothers, Jordan and Carter, alternated between silent worry and tearful panic. Each glance at the door, each empty room, a reminder of what was lost. Meanwhile, investigative leads twisted and turned, creating layers of complexity. Some suggested that Kadin may have planned to leave town, perhaps visiting a friend or relative. Others noted that his belongings, left behind wallet, phone, keys, made voluntary departure unlikely. A minor clue, a receipt found in a nearby store, suggested a time and location. But cross-referencing with GPS data yielded inconsistencies. Officers found themselves chasing shadows, information that almost seemed designed to mislead, or perhaps simply reflected the chaotic reality of human memory and behavior. The motif of vanishing without trace became more pronounced. Trails ended abruptly. Signals died mid-transit. Physical evidence, clothing, personal effects was absent. Footprints in snow, erased by wind or rain, offered no clues. The world seemed to fold in on itself, a place familiar yet suddenly alien. And the investigators, like everyone else, were forced to confront the reality. Kadin Black was gone, and no clear path led to understanding why. Tension spilled into the broader community. Friends, neighbors, and classmates followed the case anxiously. Social media buzzed with speculation posts about sightings, theories about abduction, or stories suggesting voluntary disappearance. Every rumor added weight, complicating the investigation and intensifying the family's fear. Even the simplest truths became contested. Was he heading north-south alone? With someone, the GPS ping offered a location. Yet how long he remained there, whether he had ever truly been at that spot, no one could confirm. The contradictions multiplied, forming a web of uncertainty. Each piece of information, each interview, each lead, only added to the growing sense of disorientation. By the end of the first week, the reality had crystallized. Kadin Black's disappearance was not just a mystery. It was a puzzle that defied logic. A story where ordinary patterns fractured into chaos. The more authorities searched, the less they knew. The more questions asked, the more contradictions arose. The ordinary rhythms of Wrightsville's snow-dusted streets, quiet houses, daily routines had become the stage for something incomprehensible. And yet, amid the chaos, a chilling realization settled over all who were involved. There was no clear indication of foul play, no struggle, no sign of a crime, no forced entry, just absence. A bright teenager, full of energy, full of life, simply gone. It was in this space where facts collided with uncertainty and evidence dissolved into speculation that the story of Kadin Black truly began to grip the imagination. A place where the ordinary, the suburban calm, meets the extraordinary. Where a missing person becomes more than a case file, and instead becomes a haunting, a puzzle, a lingering question that refuses to be answered. The more they searched, the less they knew. And it is here, in these rising incidents, in the frustration, the conflict, the contradictions, that the story moves from disappearance to mystery, setting the stage for the deeper, darker layers yet to come. Could he still be out there, unseen, unnoticed? The town of Wrightsville slept unaware, yet for Kadin Black the ordinary world had already slipped into something else. A place where shadows lingered longer than they should, where silence carried weight, where absence became a presence. Weeks into the investigation, authorities were still piecing together the fragments left behind. The fragments that stubbornly refused to form a coherent picture. The last known GPS trail traced Kadin to a stretch of Old Commons Road 3 miles from his friend's house. Agents drove that road repeatedly, noting every turn, every side street, every tree line that could conceal movement. They measured distances, checked for hidden paths. Nothing tangible emerged. It was as if the signal itself had been a brief echo, a ghost of presence, and then gone. And then there were the missing personal items. His wallet gone, his phone gone, some clothes unaccounted for. Small, everyday items, yet their absence painted a disturbing canvas. How does a teenager simply vanish, leaving behind only fragments? As if someone had carefully erased all traces of him, investigators reviewed every lead possible: sightings, vehicles in the area, suspicious activity reported by locals. Each lead, a thread that dissolved before it could be followed. The family clung to any clue. Kadin's journal, sparse but revealing, contained brief notes about his day-to-day thoughts, mundane worries, small victories, moments of self-reflection. Nothing in it suggested fear. Nothing suggested premeditation. Nothing that explained why he would disappear without a word. His text messages, too, were puzzling. Some unanswered, some ambiguous, some hinting at plans that friends deny he ever mentioned. The contradictions piled up, a chorus of conflicting memories, half-truths, and speculation. And then there was the community's voice carried on the digital wind. Online forums lit up, threads growing longer with each passing hour. Reddit, Facebook, local discussion boards. People theorized, imagined, projected motives. Some suggested that Kadin had chosen to vanish to start over somewhere unknown. Others speculated darker possibilities, that someone had orchestrated his disappearance, that it was planned, deliberate, unseen. Every post, every comment, became part of the story, intertwining with real-life evidence in ways that blurred the line between truth and imagination. One thread described him as having walked into the night with no intention of returning, while another argued that he was a victim of forces unseen, manipulated, or coerced by unknown hands. The variety of interpretations created a kind of folklore, a modern mythology born not from centuries of oral tradition, but from pixel screens and the collective unease of strangers connected by curiosity and fear. Meanwhile, investigators tried to sift through what was tangible. Security cameras from nearby businesses and homes were checked repeatedly. Footage showed empty streets, no young man walking, no vehicle stopping. Every frame was a reminder of absence, a visual confirmation that Kadin Black was no longer where he had been, and perhaps never had been where anyone thought he was. The timeline remained fragmented. Different witnesses remembered different hours. Some claimed to have seen him that morning. Others were certain he had not been visible after noon. Phones pinged briefly without correspondence to sightings. Locations suggested by friends contradicted one another. The evidence was a broken mirror reflecting multiple realities, none of which fully aligned. And in this tension, the unknown, the absence, there was fear. Fear of what could not be explained. Fear of a normal life interrupted in ways that defied logic. Parents in Wrightsville whispered warnings to their children. Friends revisited conversations and behaviors, questioning everything. What had seemed mundane now felt ominous. Each ordinary street corner, each familiar path became potential sites of mystery, of disappearance. Yet in spite of the fear and speculation, no definitive answers emerged. No confession, no discovery, no trace of Kadin beyond the last ping on a lonely road. His family's hope persisted. Fragile, delicate, but unyielding. Each lead, however small, became a beacon. Each rumor, each online theory, each fleeting clue was a thread in a tapestry that remained unfinished, a story incomplete. The folklore intertwined with fact continues to grow. The digital community keeps theorizing. Some claim they have seen him in passing. Others claim premonitions, stories of déjà vu, the kind of tales that blur reality and imagination. They are modern myths not to deceive, but to make sense of something that resists understanding. And in this interweaving of real and imagined, the case of Kadin Black becomes larger than a single disappearance. It becomes a narrative of absence, a story told in shadows, whispers, and gaps in knowledge. Could he still be out there, unseen, unnoticed? Each possibility seems as plausible as the next, and yet none are confirmed, and that is the heart of the mystery. The ordinary life he led, the routine of his days, contrasts sharply with the extraordinary nature of what occurred. Kadin Black's case at this stage exists in dual realities, one of fact measured by GPS pings, missing possessions, witness statements, the other of folklore, speculation, digital myth, and collective imagination. Both layers interact, overlap, and reinforce the same chilling truth: a young man, full of life, vanished without resolution. Could he still be out there, unseen, unnoticed? The uncertainty, the gaps, the contradictions, all build tension for what comes next. Each unanswered question, each missing piece, prepares the audience for the deeper, darker exploration, the high stakes, the escalations, the confrontations with uncertainty that await in the next phase of the story. Every lead, dead end, every hope, fading. The search intensified. Lights cut through the darkness of December nights. Officers patrolled streets, alleys, and riverbanks, tracing every possible route Kadin Black could have taken, retracing his steps, questioning anyone who might have seen him, chasing shadows that dissolved upon approach. Every clue, every whisper, was pursued with vigor. Yet each investigation seemed to circle back to the same void, empty streets, silent witnesses, and echoes of absence. Phone records were re-examined. The last ping from Old Commons Road replayed on monitors. The signal a flicker in time. Brief, isolated, inexplicable. Investigators drove the road again and again, scanning tree lines, checking side paths, photographing every patch of snow, every fence, every place a teenager might pass. But nothing answered the questions. Nothing confirmed his presence. And yet the pattern repeated itself, the motif of disappearance reinforcing the unease. The missing possessions remained an unsettling mystery: wallet, phone, clothes, ordinary items that when absent take on extraordinary significance. Each vanished object felt like a message, silent but loaded, a punctuation mark in a sentence that no one could finish. Witness statements continued to conflict. Friends recalled his demeanor differently, some saying he seemed excited, others that he seemed preoccupied, distracted, withdrawn. Each recollection painted Kadin differently, and yet none explained his absence. Officers encountered dead ends at every turn. Camera footage yielded nothing but empty streets. Calls to neighbors brought echoes of uncertainty. Leads dissolved into contradictions. Every avenue of inquiry seemed to vanish just as it opened, a recurring cycle that trapped investigators in a loop of hope and frustration. With each failed lead, the tension grew, a suffocating atmosphere that crept into the Black household, into the hearts of friends, into the very fabric of Wrightsville itself. Meanwhile, the folklore surrounding the case expanded. Urban legends, digital speculation, and local conjecture intertwined with the real investigation. Reddit threads and social media posts proposed unseen forces, strangers manipulating events, conspiracies too vast to comprehend. Some suggested Kadin had been taken by something beyond ordinary comprehension, abducted, erased or lured into a realm where evidence could not follow. Others whispered that he had chosen to vanish to leave behind a life he no longer wished to live. These theories, unverified yet persistent, amplified the sense of dread, feeding the imagination of a public desperate for answers. In the Black household, days blended into nights, nights into anxious waits, and hope wavered like a candle in the wind. Kara and Maurice paced their home, replaying every phone call, every conversation, every argument, searching for a clue they might have missed. Jordan and Carter lingered silently, staring out windows, wondering if the boy they loved was still alive, somewhere, out there, unseen. Investigators too felt the weight. Every meeting, every briefing, every review of evidence seemed to lead back to the same paradox: abundant activity, yet no resolution. Extensive effort, yet no results. Each lead followed each witness interviewed. And yet Kadin Black remained absent from the world in ways that defied logic. Every attempt to bridge the gaps of his disappearance was met with the same haunting emptiness. The motif of the disappearing trail dominated the narrative. Phone signals vanished mid-transit. Physical evidence did not exist where expected. Witness accounts contradicted one another. Patterns normally reliable in investigation were broken. The ordinary rules of cause and effect appeared suspended, leaving authorities and community alike grappling with the incomprehensible. And yet, even in this maelstrom of confusion and conjecture, the story reached its climactic tension. Questions multiplied faster than answers. Every theory, voluntary disappearance, abduction accident, or supernatural interference, seemed equally plausible and equally unprovable. The town whispered and wondered. Investigators reviewed files and retraced paths, and the digital community theorized, each adding layers to a narrative that had no resolution. As the search continued, one thought haunted all who followed the case. What truly happened to Kadin Black? Each dead end deepened the mystery. Each fading lead heightened the suspense. Each unanswered question fed the uncertainty that hung over Wrightsville like winter fog. And in this space between the known and the unknowable, the audience is confronted with the ultimate tension of the story. A young man vanished, leaving no trace, no explanation, only echoes of his existence and the unanswered questions that linger still. The climax is not an event, but a convergence. The convergence of evidence and rumor, hope and despair, ordinary life and inexplicable disappearance. The loops of investigation, the conflicting testimonies, the vanished items, the fleeting GPS signal, all converge here. At the heart of uncertainty, at the edge of comprehension. And in that convergence, the story waits, unresolved, leaving one final chilling question. What really happened to Kadin Black? And could he still be out there, somewhere, unseen, unnoticed? Every lead, dead end. Every hope, fading. And yet the story persists. A mystery that refuses to be contained. A disappearance that continues to haunt. A young life interrupted. And a town forever changed. The case remains open, unanswered. The winter months passed, and yet Kadin Black remained unseen. The days blurred into nights. The calendar pages turned. But nothing changed. For the Black family, life continued under a veil of uncertainty. Each sunrise a reminder of what was missing. Each evening a silence that refused to lift. Kara and Maurice continued their search, following leads, posting updates online, meeting with law enforcement, retracing the steps their son may have taken. Jordan and Carter, growing older by the day, learned to live with the quiet absence that filled their home. An emptiness measured not in objects or spaces, but in memories and what-ifs. Law enforcement persisted, combing through every detail, every report, every hint of activity. Local police maintained regular patrols, checked new leads, and collaborated with federal investigators. Every tip received careful scrutiny. Every piece of information cross-referenced against timelines, phone records, witness statements, and physical evidence. Yet the motif that had haunted the investigation from the beginning, vanishing without trace, remained constant. Phone signals ended abruptly. Personal belongings had disappeared. Witness accounts clashed. Security footage was unremarkable. Every time the trail seemed to open, it evaporated, leaving nothing but blind spots, spaces where truth might hide, and uncertainty reigned supreme. These blind spots, these gaps in knowledge, are at the heart of what makes Kadin Black's disappearance so haunting. Investigators call them anomalies, data that cannot be reconciled, timelines that do not align, locations that cannot be verified. For the family, these blind spots are more than anomalies. They are wounds that will not close. Each gap in understanding is a space for speculation, a place where the mind fills the emptiness with possibilities both hopeful and horrifying. The digital community has continued to follow the case with vigilance, posting updates, analyzing evidence, theorizing about Kadin's fate. Reddit threads grow, new comments appear almost daily. Some recount supposed sightings, others suggest complex conspiracies, and many share personal reflections or fears. Social media has become a repository of echoes, fragments of conversation, speculation, and concern that extend the story beyond the borders of Wrightsville, beyond the reach of traditional investigation. These echoes serve as both record and myth, documenting how deeply Kadin's absence has penetrated collective consciousness. Annual reports of missing persons in Pennsylvania have occasionally mentioned Kadin's case, cataloged alongside others that remain unresolved. In these dry bureaucratic documents, his story becomes a statistic, a line of text. Yet beneath the words lies the human weight, a family searching, a community unsettled, a young life interrupted. These reports, though clinical, resonate with the same motif that has defined the investigation, the persistent presence of absence. And for viewers, for those who follow these events from afar, the narrative closes not with answers but with questions. What truly happened to Kadin Black? Was he taken? Or did he choose to leave? Are there forces at work unseen, unknown, influencing outcomes in ways we cannot comprehend? Or is the truth something mundane, simple, yet obscured by circumstance, memory, and the randomness of life itself? The story ends without closure, leaving space for reflection, for imagination, for fear and fascination alike. The motif of disappearance recurring throughout this documentary remains central. Absence leaves traces, faint, ambiguous, incomplete, that hint at possibilities without confirming them. The loops of investigation, the contradictions of witness statements, the vanishing of personal effects, the gaps in digital records all converge to create a narrative that is simultaneously compelling and unsettling. Each unanswered question, each unresolved lead, each blind spot in the investigation reinforces the sense of mystery, of a story that refuses to be neatly contained. In Wrightsville, the echoes of Kadin's life continue to ripple outward. His family lives in the tension between hope and despair, retracing steps, visiting locations, speaking with authorities, holding fast to the possibility that someday, somehow, answers may emerge. Friends and neighbors carry memories that intersect with rumor and speculation, shaping the narrative of absence into something that lingers beyond personal recollection. And in the wider community, online and off, the story endures, growing, evolving, persisting. A testament to the human need to make sense of loss, uncertainty, and unexplained events. The final moments of this documentary are not defined by resolution but by presence and absence. The silence that surrounds Kadin Black's disappearance is not empty. It resonates. It carries weight. It leaves viewers with the question that frames the entire investigation. Do you believe in the facts, or in the spaces between them, the gaps that no one can explain? It is in this tension between knowledge and uncertainty, between tangible evidence and elusive truth, that the story finds its lasting power. The case remains open, unanswered, and the echoes of Kadin Black's disappearance linger, in homes, in streets, in memories, and in the imagination. For those watching, the story is a reminder of the fragility of certainty, of the profound effect of absence, and the enduring human impulse to search, to question, to hope. Subscribe to follow cases that have never truly closed, and to keep their voices alive. The case remains open, unanswered. And with that, the search, the speculation, the echoes continue, leaving Kadin Black's story suspended in the space between reality and mystery, where absence speaks louder than presence and the unknown is forever haunting.